extend those expiring Obamacare subsidies so that healthcare premiums don't rise for millions of Americans. On the other hand, Republicans say we're not going to talk while the government is shut down.
A bipartisan group of senators expected to force a vote tonight on their resolution aimed at limiting the Trump administration's strikes against boats allegedly transporting drugs from Venezuela. After reports of progress being made on talks between Israel and Hamas to end the war in Gaza, President Trump says he's considering traveling to Egypt as early as this weekend if a deal is reached. The White House says Friday President Trump is expected to receive his annual physical at Walter Reed Medical Facility. This is ABC News. 6 former surgeons general who have served under presidents since former George W. Bush are warning about the changes in a letter published in the Washington Post and calling for Health Secretary RFK Jr.'s resignation. Here's ABC's Rachel Scott.
Jerome Adams, who again was appointed by President Trump in his first term, posting this on social media. Disinformation and the destruction of public health and America's trust in doctors will kill more people than cigarettes. HHS did not respond to our request for comment, but in a statement to Axios, they did say they remain committed to restoring trust, reforming broken healthcare systems, and ensuring that every American has a real choice in their health care.
An HHS spokesperson has since issued a statement saying in part the doctors are the same officials, quote, who presided over the decline in America's public health. Authorities in Louisiana, along with the U.S. Marshals Service, announced the arrest of the 10th and final escapee from the Orleans Parish Jail back in May. I'm Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Do you have 3 ex-wives and your current trophy wife wants a life insurance policy 3 times the size of the policies you had to purchase for your previous mistakes? If so, you need to call Big Lou at Term Provider, 800-859-3220. Big Lou is intimately familiar with your problems, and if you're 50 to 60 years old and in reasonably good health, a $1 million policy should only cost about $100 to $200 per month. Big Lou may have a solution for your previous policies as well. You may even save enough money to lighten the load on your new $1 million policy. Remember, call Big Lou. He's like you, except he's only on number 2. Call Term Provider at 800-859-3220. That's 800-859-3220 for $1 million in term life insurance that you can live with. Call Big Lou at 800-859-3220. 800-859-3220.
Continuing the legacy started in 1904, Roger Pellerin of Gate City Monument Incorporated continues to provide the same high-quality monument, custom headstone, and stoneworking craftsmanship today that they built their reputation on over 100 years ago. Servicing Nashua, New Hampshire, as well as nearby areas in Massachusetts, such as Lowell, Billerica, Chelmsford, and beyond. From creating custom monuments to memorialize, to landscaping and granite work or restorative services, each job is done to your satisfaction and is backed by decades of experience and integrity. If you're thinking about stonework, think Roger Pellerin of Gate City Monument. Visit online at gatecitymonument.com. Stop by and meet Roger at 321 West Hollis Street in Nashua, or call 603-883-7141. That's 603-883-7141. Gate City Monument, memorials of distinction for people who care.
The views and opinions of the following show do not reflect those of WSMN, its owners, and/or associates.
Thank you for listening to WSMN 1590 AM and 95.3 FM. The following program has been previously recorded. Welcome to the Common Sense Conservatives, a political discussion group about current events and other government-related matters every Wednesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Right here on WSMN 1590 AM, WSMN 95.3 FM, and streaming live on wsmn.live. Making sense of the inverted reality we are subject to every day, the Common Sense Conservatives are here to help bring you back to reality. Now, your hosts, Chris Wyatt, Todd McKinley, and John Gorton.
All right. Hey, folks, welcome back to the Common Sense Conservatives. Despite what you just heard, this is not pre-recorded. That was probably from last week. Hope everybody can hear me all right. I'm Todd McKinley here in Indianapolis this week, not in Northeast Tennessee, but I'll be back tomorrow. Colonel Chris Wyatt, looks like you're back in your home studio there, sir.
I am, and this is live radio, not previously recorded. We have a little snafu there from last week. Yeah, I am. I'm back from the mountain states. Boy, it's gorgeous out there, and I came back just in time. A couple feet of snow fell where I was just days ago.
Well, the conspiracy theory is, from what I'm hearing, I mean, I don't know, left-wing websites are saying that you were out there doing something, seeding clouds or something. I'm not sure. I'm hearing the conspiracy theories.
Shh. You're not supposed to know. We better be quiet. We're hunting rabbits.
There you go. We got John Grosvenor holding down the studio there in Nashua. John, you're looking cool tonight. Those purple lights behind you?
No, I think those are just the regular lights. Are just picking up the color of the paint or something on the wall.
Okay.
But yeah, that little thing about that was from last week, and I guess they didn't cycle out the opening there. But unfortunately, we didn't have a live show last week, as listeners may know, because Chris and I were both out of town, and I think Todd was having a hard time getting with it, and so we just decided, you know what, if two of us can't make it, why leave Todd hanging? So we just did a rerun.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that. Yeah. Tonight, like I said, I'm in Indianapolis up here for the American Legion fall meetings. A lot of important stuff we've accomplished. And we do have a guest tonight. Is he standing by chance, John?
He's in here somewhere. You want me to go ahead and bring him in now?
Yeah. So we're going to bring in Monty Fritz. He's a Tennessee. Hey, there he is. He's on the road campaigning. Monty is a state representative in Tennessee, and he's out on the campaign trail running for governor of the great state of Tennessee. Monty Fritz, welcome to the Common Sense Conservative, sir.
Hey, I appreciate y'all having me. I went ahead and recorded mine just as a premonition of how y'all are going to introduce the show tonight. So, but I'll go back to live.
All right, he's back live, everybody. Love it. Monty, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your background. He is an Army veteran, by the way. Joining the Colonel and I, we're both Army veterans as well, obviously. Monty's an Army veteran, state representative, running for governor, well-educated man. Tell everybody a little bit about your background, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. My wife and I have 42 years, have 2 sons and 3 grandkids. Spent my civilian working career, most of it in the uranium processing, synthesis, and manufacturing line of work. Held several different roles there. Was the director of operations at the Y-12 National Security Complex for enriched uranium operations. Director of ops for nuclear fuels up in Irwin, makes all the for the Navy, for the subs and the carriers. While Trump 45 was in, I took an appointment to manage the uranium, both flavors, 235 and 238, plutonium and tritium, material recovery and recycle, set up the Office of Stockpile Production Integration. Along the way there, I did 10 years with the Army and the National Guard, and up through 93. In 2003, I re-enlisted. I decided we weren't going to send Tennesseans off to the big sand pit without me, and so I re-enlisted. I was a cavalry scout, staff sergeant. I had a convoy security and PSD team based in Diyala province. We did most of the country between the Zagros Mountain and the Euphrates and Tigris rivers, mostly from Baghdad north. But.
Absolutely. Very familiar with operating in those areas for sure. Monty, could you tell everybody why you're running for governor of the great state of Tennessee? And I think everybody wants to listen up for this one.
Yes, for liberty and less government. That's exactly why I'm running. I have prayed about this for months. I thought perhaps it was just continued frustration with weak men in office now. There is still that frustration, but I do feel called to run. That's not it's not a prophecy that I'm going to win. I'm going to work hard enough to win. And
there you go.
We have seen government grow in Tennessee in the last 6 years. Our budget requests coming from the governor's office have gone from $37.5 billion to $59.5 billion, 59% increase in 6 years. Under a Republican, that's atrocious. That's not small government. That's not limited taxation. So I fully intend to get a hold of that budget. Some of the things that I want to focus upon in the budget are the universities and colleges that have allowed wokeism and Marxism, atheism to dominate the scene. And we're going to take a scalpel or a hatchet to that under the Fritz administration. I'm going to get those people's attention that we're going to train up young people on how to think, not what to think. We're not going to indoctrinate and intimidate in Tennessee schools and universities that receive public funds. And we're going to give these young Tennesseans and ones that come here to study an opportunity to learn how to deduce and think and be great Americans.
There you go, Monty. Let me turn it over to Colonel Chris Wyatt. We love the great interview tactic, by the way. The Colonel, you're going to love what he has to say with the questions he's going to ask you. And like you said, don't softball anything. And I love the fact that you did say that, and your chief of staff said, don't softball any questions to him. He'll take all the hard questions. And Colonel Chris Wyatt, he'll give you some good questions. Colonel,
Well, good questions aren't always hard questions, but boy, Monty, did he set me up for failure there? But I do have one question for you. You are running against kind of a big name out there, Marsha Blackburn. That's, people outside Tennessee have heard that name before. Is that a big challenge for you? Do you think the machine will be up against you, or have you got a good chance here?
Sure it is, but I'm running against more than just a career politician in Marsha Blackburn, but we're running against a Nashville establishment that thinks that we average people, we the people in Tennessee don't really matter. They treat us like cattle in the field that they want to milk until our udders are dry, and then they want to send us off to the glue factory. And so Congressman Rose and Senator Blackburn are just D.C. politicians that are running for this office. I think that I will definitely outwork them both. I haven't seen a Washington, D.C. I don't know about you all, but I'm certain that I'll outwork them. I think my message is different. I know it is. When we have people that have overseen a growth, or at least part of the growth, to $37 trillion in debt, we can trust them to zero extent to be able to get control of an out-of-control budget growth in the state of Tennessee. And the message of less government. When we have overreach in every category in the state of Tennessee. Guns, atrocious gun right behavior by Governor Wishful establishment. Unfortunately, I think most of those career politicians will fall right into that, and so it's different. I know this. I've been from the Mississippi River to the Smoky Mountain many times now, and I can tell you that people all across Tennessee have a thirst for liberty. They understand that 2 Corinthians 3:17, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty. That's a created and designed into us attribute that we desire. And there's a thirst for it in Tennessee now, distaste for government growing and continuing to take our tax dollars and send it out in corporate welfare. So, short answer to your question, yes.
Well, Monty, sorry.
This is
sorry, I thought you finished there as a breakup.
We're determined to do it, and we've a plan to accomplish that.
All right, sorry to interrupt Monty there, but I thought he'd stop because there was a break and it's a pause. I think it's a signal. But all right, so it is a big hill to climb. You said that. You mentioned faith here. I noticed that you're a graduate of Liberty, where you studied business.
Have you still got me?
I've still got you. Can you hear us? Can you hear us? I don't think you can hear us.
Let me take him out and put him back in. See what.
All right,
see
hang
if
on.
that helps.
All right, yeah, I think his towers are not that great in part of the state. There he is back. Can you hear us, Monty?
Am I still with you, friends?
No, doesn't sound like it. We can hear you, but can't hear us? I don't think you can hear us. Hopefully,
Todd,
catch.
I'll take him out. Go ahead and send him a message if you will.
All right, Todd will do that. All right. In the meantime, so I was going to ask the candidate for governor of Tennessee about his background, his educational background. He's a graduate of Liberty University, which is a Christian school, and he has a degree in business and chemistry from there, which is an interesting mix. I was going to be curious about that. And then he also has a degree in divinity, if I'm not mistaken, from there. And I wanted to probe into that a little bit. His theological studies from Liberty, and then he's a volunteer. Got an MBA from University of Tennessee. A very interesting background there. And so I thought that we'd get him that. We'll try to get him back up. Obviously, his connection's not so great. It's tough to do on the road, folks. the signals don't always carry through. That's it's one of the vagaries of doing stuff over the internet these days. It doesn't always work out. I mean,
Right.
but I don't know where Todd's staying at, man. But I got to hook up with Todd because he's getting some really, really cool hotel rooms there. It kind of looks like a Hampton Inn, but it looks a little more Gucci than a Hampton Inn.
Oh, it's a Sheraton. It's nice. Beautiful
I can
location.
see that,
There's
man.
Monty's back in here now. So
yeah, so I went out with these guys. They put me in the Best Western for $80 a night. Still scratching the bed bugs off me.
There we go. Monty's going taking his video off. He's just going for voice there. But Monty, we can hear you if you want to just keep talking there. Maybe not. Maybe we can't.
Have you got me now, man?
Yeah, we got you.
We got you now, but boy, you got a lot of background noise, but we'll go with that. So, this is Colonel Wyatt again. So, I noticed that you have a degree from Liberty in business and chemistry at the bachelor level, and then you have a theological studies degree from Liberty as well. And you talked about faith. I'm going to mention that faith forms a big portion of your platform.
I'm sorry, that's just not going to work.
Yeah, it's just too much. All right. Well, if it doesn't work, we'll get him back. Okay. So anyway, in the meantime, while we try to sort that out, folks, apologies for that. Again, these things happen. It isn't a perfect world. I think back to how we used to do things before you had the internet, and it was really challenging back then. I mean, remember, people would always call in on the telephone, and we still do that, but that's not the most common way people do things now. But anyway, Todd tries. I don't know if Todd's going to reach him. I don't know if we're going to get any better signals, so maybe we bag it. Maybe he calls back.
Right. Yeah. We'll have him back on if we can't get him back on this hour. We'll have him back on where he can be stationary at a better signal for sure.
Yeah, I've had to do that in the past when I've called in. Like, I just sit in one spot where the signal is good. But okay, so while we're moving on from that for the moment, let's talk about what's going on in the world, guys. Todd, it's your lead tonight. I don't want to steal your thunder, but I mean, we got J.B. Pritzker and his "I never refused a donut." J.B. Pritzker. We've got the National Guard deploying. We've got Trump. Right. They're lying about Trump. I'll let you, if you're ready to go with it, run with it.
No, yeah. Let's talk about the National Guard going to Chicago from Texas, and I think there's some other National Guards that are probably going there as well to get a handle on that place. And we're hearing that the mayor and the chief of police is telling them not to back up ICE or any federal agents who may be in distress or maybe under fire, whatever the case may be. What are your thoughts on that? What are you hearing?
Well, the Insurrection Act of 1807 exists for a reason, and the actions of the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago border on insurrection. And quite frankly, I think that they ought to be wearing bracelets and be charged with federal crimes for obstructing the federal government. While we are definitely not thrilled with the federal government overreaching or overstepping its bounds, certainly they have a responsibility to protect the country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Both you and I know that, Todd, as does the candidate for governor of Tennessee. We all took an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And the Democrats have loved for decades to pretend that any use of the military is a militaristic and it's the sign of a fascist state, when in reality, the role of the military is, in fact, to defend the homeland as well, not simply defend our borders. And that gets lost on them. And, these people, they had an insurrection in the summer of 2020, so-called Summer of Love, when we actually had a country declare itself independent of the United States in the city of Seattle, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. And the Trump administration did nothing about it. They occupied, attacked the federal courthouse, occupied it, built a zone around it, set up their own laws, declared their own independence. And then they actually, they segregated their society. Only black people could go here. It was insane. These people need to be stopped. And Pritzker and Brandon Johnson are good examples of people who are out of control, lawless. And it's funny how they try to turn this around and say that the federal government's the ones out of control. And they're trying to turn Chicago into a war zone, when in fact, Chicago is a war zone. The 4th of July, 46 people murdered in the 4th of July weekend. That's insane. It is a war zone. I mean, Todd, that's my thoughts on this. It's long overdue.
Oh, absolutely. And you think about the number of people in Chicago who have died just from straight gunfire. Kids sitting in their rooms, just trying to read a book or watch television, whatever, getting killed in their own beds, in their own rooms because of straight gunfire, Yeah,
that's the point here. I mean, there's so many innocents are killed in this. These aren't kids doing drugs or people involved in prostitution or gangsterism or things like that. These are innocent kids. And this is happening in Chicago all the time. And this happens because of the lawlessness. And it only got worse after the Summer of Love with this defund the police nonsense, because of the man who killed himself over fentanyl overdose, but we see a police officer illegitimately incarcerated over a racist decision, and a court that should have had its judgment overturned and putting Derek Chauvin and the other police officers in prison. Their actions were not out of line. They were railroaded into prison. They're not the only ones. Several white and Asian and Hispanic police officers railroaded into prison over fraudulent charges in that summer by cowardly courts and cowardly juries that had no business overseeing those judgments. It's shocking what's happened to people in this country. Law enforcement carrying out the law when people have misbehaved. And I refer to the police officer who pulled her service revolver or service weapon instead of her taser when
Right.
the wanted felon drug her partner down the road in a car by refusing to stop. And, use of deadly force is authorized to protect life and limb. And that's what she was doing. And she meant to pull her taser, but because she made a mistake and she was honest about it, she spent 3 years in prison as a convicted felon and her life is over. It's unbelievable what's happened. The man was a wanted felon. He tried to flee from police. He waited until the police officer had reached into the car on the passenger side and then drove away and endangered that officer's life. She saved the officer's life and spent 3 years in prison as a convicted felon. Her life completely destroyed. Unbelievable.
Right. Well, we have Monty back on. He's on the phone now, so this will be hopefully a little bit better for us. Monty, go ahead, sir. John, you said you had him on the phone,
I've got
right?
you now, I think. Can y'all hear me?
Oh, yeah, that's fantastic,
Absolutely.
Monty.
Colonel, go with the questioning there.
Okay. So, Monty, welcome back. The vagaries of technology that always help us. I was noticing that your educational background, you have a BS in business and chemistry from Liberty University, a Christian school. And then you got your master's in theological studies from Liberty as well. And then we'll talk later, but you also have an MBA from the University of Tennessee. But Liberty University, I'm guessing that faith plays a large role in your service to the nation, both in uniform and in the state legislature. And now your desire to become the governor of Tennessee. Faith must play a big role.
It does, yes, sir. And I think it played a big role in our founders' and lives and their decision to resist the tyranny of Great Britain. I think, again, I don't know if it come through when we were talking earlier. I think that 2 Corinthians 3:17, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty. I think there's a natural desire in us to repel tyranny. And I think some men cave to the tyranny and some men accept it. Some of us are gracious for a time, and I guess, don't want to be too obstinate about things. But I think we're certainly at a time in America and in Tennessee, and if the word is obstinate, then let's use that, because I think most Tennesseans have really had it up to their nose holes with continuing to pay taxes and see it go out in corporate welfare, and a government in the state of Tennessee that doesn't behave like it works for us. I think I was reading in Nehemiah chapter 4 and 5, and this is where Nehemiah is rebuilding the wall, and every man kept a trowel in one hand and worked on the wall and a sword in the other. And I think God expects us to care for ourselves and protect ourselves and defend ourselves and recognize that there is evil in the world. And so these misguided approaches that folks in government have, that they're going to restrict our right to keep and bear arms, infringe upon that right, suggest that we're non-essential in times of emergency and tell us we can't earn a living. There's no room for that. And there's no constitutional authority for those people to behave that way. So we're going to fight back against that. And we're going to assertively and decisively restore liberty and less government back to Tennessee.
Well, I'm familiar with volunteer state. My brother lives down that way, but I'm not a subject matter expert on the internal domestic issues of the state. But a lot of them mirror the exact same issues talking about nationally. Now, one reason why I'm a fan of volunteer state is, of course, because Peyton Manning was a volunteer, so I can't help but be a fan of Tennessee for that reason. But I have to say that I noticed that you were involved in, I guess it was an extraordinary session. You were on an immigration committee. Legal immigration specifically is a major issue here in the United States. Is that a significant problem for the residents, for the citizens of volunteer state, or was this special session related to something different?
It is. It continued to be a problem. We did, while Biden was still illegitimately in the White House, we did an Article 3, Section 5 Tennessee Constitution piece of legislation that would authorize Governor Lee to send a brigade-sized force of guardsmen to assist Texas. Gentlemen recall, at that time, Texas was making some attempt anyways, to slow down the ingress of illegals into the United States. And the federal government would go down and tear down the razor wire, the concertina, or whatever that they had strung up. And it had gotten my attention to the point we went down to McAllen, Texas, and visited on the border and saw that it was actually worse than what even Fox News or OAN was reporting. And so decided to do that. Unfortunately, Governor Lee didn't seize that opportunity. He could have sent, they limited a brigade-size force to 2,000 for determining a cost. That's really the Article 3, Section 5 of the Tennessee Constitution is all about the people's will in sending their militia or guard off potentially into harm's way to put down rebellions and invasions and to pay for it. So we did that. We tried legislation just this year, 25, that would have stopped paying to educate foreigners, and it failed in the Senate. There's just a really disappointing sentiment amongst many of the Republicans. I can't blame the Democrats for it. It's weak Republicans that are allowing this to happen, and it's fiscally killing us. We're spending, by some estimates, hundreds of millions of dollars in the education of children that are non-citizens, all created in the image of God, but they were all brought here illegally. And so we offered a piece of legislation that would simply require documentation that you're here legally before the child enrolls in school. And if you can't provide that, pay the tuition amount up front. It's about $10,000 a year. And I thought that was fair, to use the modern word, equitable. But some of my Senate colleagues didn't, and they killed that bill. It's disappointing again that Tennessee citizens are doing without essential government services, things that fall within the bounds of the Constitution, and we're spending money on people who are non-citizens. And that must end. That must stop. I'm determined to stop that. I'm determined to push for stiffer penalties on those who do some soft form of human trafficking, because those employers that bring in illegal or illegals knowingly, pay them under the table, they're actually taking advantage of another human being and doing something that is illegal. And we need to really go aggressively after those companies and employers that do that. It's not okay. It's not okay to establish a fertile ground for illegals to reside here. I did a piece of legislation a couple years ago, and we were successful in getting it passed that enhanced the penalty for criminal illegals who commit violent crimes or any crime with a deadly weapon, the use of a deadly weapon, to life in prison with no parole. I don't have any desire to incarcerate these human beings in Tennessee penitentiaries and pay for that. I just don't want them to come here. And I think that we have laws and consequences to breaking the law to discourage crime. And so that's what we're trying to do. We've unfortunately, many in leadership roles just have become soft. I really don't mean that to just be critical. I mean that to awaken these men. God did not create us to be weak and timid souls. He created us to be kind and compassionate, but he also created us to be firm and to be law and order. And we're struggling with that some in Tennessee. So I'm pushing hard back on that.
Well, you touch on a point there that's very valid, and I'll come back to your previous point and loop this into it and get your response. Specifically, you talk essentially about a credible deterrence to convince people who have invaded our nation and violated our sovereignty that they shouldn't be coming here or they should enter legally. And you talk about that, the legislation got passed. But let's get back to the education thing. I think it's interesting because people on the political left want to play this namby-pamby softy thing that these criminal alien invaders' offspring should go to our schools and we have to pay taxes so that support them. They strain our schools, fill our schools. They bring kids here and don't have childhood immunizations, and suddenly have measles, mumps, rubella epidemics in little pockets and clusters around the country where there's many of them. But here's the thing that gets lost on these people. We have all over this country states like Maryland and others that allow criminal alien invaders to attend university who are illegally in the country as in-state residents, when American citizens across the border in Pennsylvania have to pay out-of-state tuition to go to school in Maryland or to go to school in a state like Tennessee when they're out of state. And not just that, but we do it to our own military. Now, they don't pay themselves, but the Department of Defense, or I'm sorry, the Department of War now, the Department of War pays local school districts millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars for the dependent children of service members who attend local schools, particularly high schools, so that they're not cheated out of funding. That's not something that these criminal alien invaders have to do. And I think that's something you're getting at here. It sounds to me like you are interested in putting credible deterrence to deter people who want to willingly violate the law, specifically criminal alien invaders.
Absolutely. And hopefully to encourage my colleagues that they can stand up. So we have this whole thing with President Trump has decided to send the National Guard into Memphis, Tennessee. I think that's unfortunate. One thing about Trump, you can depend on him to be okay with acting, okay with doing something. And I think that's favorable. But the unfavorable part of that is we had just demonstrated 2 years ago how to enact this Article 3, Section 5 through a bill. And we could have, for years now, have sent Tennessee Guardsmen into Memphis to help put down what many there identify as a criminal rebellion. And we waited. Our governor waited. We've had, and it's not been just Bill Lee. It's been Haslam and perhaps even the one before him. But we have lost law and order in some of our blue cities, because of these Marxist mayors and city councils and hug a thug mentality, that they have allowed the honest person, the person who just wants to go to work or go to the grocery store or the market, they're afraid to get outside. And then weak Republicans, like our current governor, do things to discourage arming oneself. There was just a huge court victory in Tennessee in the Western District Chancery Court in a suit that was Hughes v. Lee. And the defendants, Lee, in the case were Governor Lee, the Attorney General, and Jeff Long, who's the Commissioner of Safety. And there's 154-year-old Jim Crow language in the law, intent to go armed. And it was put in the code, I'm told, through history, to discourage black men from arming themselves. Well, they want to hold on to that. This court ruled that language is unconstitutional. While we should have been celebrating a removal of Jim Crow law from code books in Tennessee, the governor decided he's going to appeal that and extend Jim Crow conditions in the state of Tennessee, not just to black folks, but I guess folks that aren't like him, that don't walk about with armed guards and live in gated communities and all those kinds of things. And so when we decide that we're going to send our guardsmen to Memphis, Tennessee, the first thing that we need to do is stop trying to enact prohibitions against the lawful Tennessee citizen arming and defending themselves, because the predatory agents in this world are looking for an opportunity to behave like a predator. And unarmed crowds and silly gun-free zones are the places that they do their dirty deeds. And so all that, to get back to your question, certainly some of that crime comes from the illegals, but some of it comes from these criminal factions of citizens. Back to the human trafficking part, that we traffic humans across the Rio Grande. I saw the paths where they come across. I saw the fences that McAllen, Texas had to put up in the water to catch the bodies that were drowning, that were coming into the waters in the city's water intake. And then we have the same thing in Memphis, Tennessee, where we have 25-year-olds who recruit and traffic 15-year-olds to do criminal deeds for them, because the 15-year-old is going to be treated differently in court. And I really think we're going to have to get tough on that if we're going to sustain any type of law and order in some of these places where we've allowed the criminal elements to really overtake the cities.
Well, I would imagine, before you answer this, let me give a couple stats here that are going to alarm people. It sounds like you're probably familiar with it as a candidate for governor, but I would imagine that if you became governor and there was an issue like Memphis where the federal government wanted to intervene to help the state, you probably cooperate with the president. But before you answer that, let me just mention, the United States murder rate is 5 per 100,000 inhabitants. That's relatively low for the reputation the United States seems to have in the press and around the world. By contrast, the rate in Nashville is 16.3. It's triple the murder rate of the United States. But that's not really where we're going with this. The rate in Memphis is 40.6 per 100,000, 8 times the national rate. And by the way, for my South African viewers who are listening to this program tonight, that is almost as bad as South Africa, which has 45 murders per 100,000. That is shocking to hear, Monty, that almost 41 people out of 100,000 that are murdered in the city of Memphis. I mean, that's the home of Elvis Presley in Graceland. I don't think of it as a murder place, but in fact, crime is quite bad there. So would you be inclined to work with the federal government to help resolve those issues in places like Memphis in particular, but also Nashville?
Absolutely. And there's certainly a place, especially for the deportation, for the federal agents to come in and the investigative arm of the FBI or whomever to come in and help the TBI. But I think my greater frustration is that we've had full authority in the state of Tennessee, this Article 3, Section 5, for decades to go restore law and order. Because I think if we have a criminal rebellion, I think that's the first question you have to ask. If there is indeed a criminal rebellion in Memphis, Tennessee, or Nashville, Tennessee, and Nashville's not a great deal better, but if that answer is yes, then you have to ask the next question. And the next question becomes, have we lost law and order in the city? And if the answer is yes, then I think it's incumbent upon the governor to help restore law and order, and he has full authority to do so. And I, it's easy. It sounds cheap for me to say this. I would have acted before now.
I understand. That's a fair point, Monty.
An armchair quarterback, right? But,
no, exactly. But your point is valid. You would have acted by now.
To stand timidly behind President Trump as he enacts this,
and
then act as if this is something you plan to do for a long time, is a great hypocrisy. And
right.
The other rumor is this, and it's rumor. It's strong rumor. It's reported that we're sending these guardsmen to Memphis unarmed. Again, if you answer those first two questions, if there's a criminal rebellion, and if you've lost law and order, and it's incumbent responsibility on the governor to restore order, and he's going to use the National Guard to do that, then why would you send them unarmed? And
absolutely,
but there is the Nashville establishment, and it's not just Governor Lee, but there's a whole group of, and I always say men, because I think the women have much more backbone in many places in America than some of the men do. This whole hate for masculinity has sunk into some of these folks, and they've become complete wimps.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And so there's a time for man to stand up, and it's time for men to stand up in America. And that doesn't mean we have to be ugly and hateful or cruel or any of those kinds of things, but we do have to behave like men. And if you hold an office such as the governor of the state of Tennessee, you have to be willing to stand up and take on those hard issues, or don't get into that business.
I agree with you. Absolutely.
So there's another question I want to explore here, Monty, with you. And you put a bill on the floor, sponsored a bill for voter identification. That was a major issue in this country, and it is for many of us that are concerned about the integrity of our elections. Can you tell us a little bit about what that bill is about and what your position is on voter ID for elections?
Absolutely. This was something that we carried with, I do most of the bills and resolutions we've done start with my ink pen. This was a case that I actually picked one up that Senator Pody was carrying for Kathy Harms. Kathy Harms is one of the leaders in election security in the state of Tennessee. And it's simply trying to clean up the language in voter identifications to look forward. We often tout in Tennessee, and I won't argue that we're not better than others in the way we do our elections. However, if that brings a sense of complacency, then it's going to really cost us somewhere in the future. There has to be a continuous improvement approach in elections, in all things in government, but in elections especially, because the cyber criminal is continually attempting to hack. So I think there's several things other than voter ID that we need to do. My friend Jody Barrett offered another voter identification bill this past year, and it was simply for those legally here in the United States to have denoted on their driver's license, because we have legal foreigners in the state of Tennessee and in the United States, and they need driver's license and all those kinds of things. But it was just to put a big red denotation that, you know, non-citizen or something to that extent. And the paid governor's lobby in the Department of Safety really pushed back on that in a less than genuine fashion, and had a contract open, as I understand it, and could have made the changes that Representative Barrett was asking for, but they pushed back and killed the bill, which is another huge problem in Tennessee. We have state employees that lobby against the rights of Tennesseans and lobby to influence the direction of legislation as it moves through the process. Our Constitution is absolutely clear. The governor gets one shot at whether he approves or disapproves of a piece of legislation. That's when it hits his desk. We do between 60 and 65 bills per year that are administration bills that the governor's people write and hand off to someone. Fritz is not going to do that. Our Tennessee Constitution is clear. Article 2, Section 1 and 2, that there are 3 departments in Tennessee government, and neither of the 3 of them do the roles of the others. And we've allowed that to get out of control, and it's become, I think that influences the budget growth. I think it influences the government overreach. I think it influences that what is an attitude in Nashville that they are the dispensor of our rights. Our Tennessee Republican Party guiding principles, which is like our platform, if you will, for the state of Tennessee, is very solid. And it says that our rights are from God and they're inviolate. And we're not behaving like that. When the governor or the attorney general or the speaker of the House think that they can squash something in either in some dirty move behind closed doors, or that they can enact an executive order that tells people they can't earn a living in the state of Tennessee, not state employees, not someone under the purview of the governor, but all citizens. We've far exceeded the bounds of the authorities given us by the Constitution. And I've got to tell you, the first thought I had when I realized we had this Hughes versus Lee court victory that I was telling you all about. And when it's a celebration thing for me, because it's righting something that was wrong, and it's correcting Jim Crow law, and it's restoring to the citizen their ability to keep and bear arms without being a criminal first, because that's Tennessee law is currently set up that if I am armed in the state of Tennessee, I am guilty of committing a crime, and I must have a defense that I can prove otherwise, like I'm open carrying or that I have a permit to carry concealed. And that's counter to innocent until proven guilty, and a concept that I think most Americans will agree that we hold to.
Indeed, it is.
So when we decided that we were going to appeal that, the governor's office was going to appeal this, my first thought was we should impeach him, because it's a gross violation of the Constitution and a betrayal of the oath. The unfortunate part of that is there's not enough people to take that hard view to make that happen. And that saddens me. So,
well, that's the problem throughout the country, Monty, where people are trying to impose things like red flag laws, which violate the Constitution and our natural rights, which you're talking about. Todd said I was going to ask the hard questions. I don't know if I'm going to ask the hard questions. He did say good questions too, but I am going to tell you that, listen, Monty, Wikipedia is not your friend. I don't know if you saw, they got a Wikipedia page on you. It's not your friend. They focus on just a couple of bills, and their focus is on your position on a bill that was introduced about cousins marrying, and then there's another thing about they're just focusing on that, and then there's a bill about school shooting and wanting to arm teachers. I don't have a problem with that one. They don't really cover much of your record at the legislative level. They just focus on a few things that are obviously leftist positions that they want people to turn against you. I don't know if you're aware of that. If you saw that, I don't know if you want to talk about those topics or not.
So we're working on correcting the Wikipedia and adding to it, and that is the cousins bill. Let me give you the story on that. So we had 4 or 5 Democrats decide that they're going to sponsor a bill that first cousins can't marry in the state of Tennessee. First, I didn't realize that we had mass marriages of first cousins occurring in the state of Tennessee.
No.
I say that with great tongue in cheek.
Right.
And secondly, if we do, those folks need to get out more. When the reporters first asked me about my vote on that. But what really those Democrats were doing they were carrying a bill to insult rural Tennesseans. It was a way to slap in the face those who have conservative values. Not that they're marrying first cousins, but it was an opportunity to do that. And I said this to a couple of reporters that have asked me about it, and this is the tongue-in-cheek part, or partially tongue-in-cheek to start with, is that looking at the voting records of 4 of those 5 Democrats that carried this, all Davidson County people, by the way, that carried this bill, they've been inbred for decades based on how they've been voting on budgets, on gun laws, on anything constitutional. I'm certain that they've had perhaps some even closer relationships that they've violated in there.
Well, that would explain an awful lot there, Monty. Look, I mean, not to interrupt you, but the reason I mention this is because the United Kingdom's National Health Service last week talked about the benefits, defended the benefits of marrying your first cousin. Now, this is obviously a consequence of Islamization, and this is not Islamophobia. I've lived in majority Muslim countries, but it's obviously kowtowing to the growing Muslim population in the United Kingdom, because this is something that most people in Western Europe and North America find not legitimate and in many cases abhorrent. But the United Kingdom's National Health Service is saying, go ahead, knock boots with your cousin. It's good. There's benefits to it. I guess you just keep it in the family. That's the reason I raised the question, because this is shocking development in the United Kingdom. And the last thing I would have expected when I started looking at congressional records is there's a mention of this in Tennessee. I mean, there's jokes people tell, but we're usually talking about Alabama and Kentucky, not Tennessee.
Well, we have a member of Congress who married her brother, though. Let's just remember that.
Well, yeah.
But that's Minnesota. That's not Tennessee.
Minnesota,
and she's Muslim. That's exactly
of
right.
course, yeah.
But,
so it's okay.
But or she's something. I don't know what she is. But I would offer this last thought to that, that the same people that offered this first cousins of opposite sex couldn't get married were okay with 2 men doing some abomination of a ceremony that is not marriage.
Right.
And I just found the irony of that so thick. So there was 2 of us. I think me and Bulso were the only ones that voted against that. And I'm not picking on all my other folks. Maybe they just didn't think through it. They think, why would you ever marry your first cousin? I agree with that. Okay. But really, do we need government telling us that?
Well, maybe
it should be
the
common sense.
Overreach of a great number of those people, and 4 out of 5 of those folks, those Democrats that carried that bill, have never really accomplished anything successful in life that required any deductive reasoning. And so it floored me that they would offer that, because they can't pass anything else. They were taking a jab at rural folks in Tennessee, and I just didn't want to be a part of it.
Well, that doesn't surprise me at all, trying to upset your rural base. Look, I mean, why would you marry first cousin? Maybe she's smoking hot. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Maybe she's adopted and she's smoking hot, and you're not really close. I don't know.
Then she's not your first cousin.
I'm kidding.
Again, boys, if you're marrying your first cousin, you need to travel more.
Absolutely. Yes, you
need
do.
to go.
But who can afford to travel, Monty? The Joe Biden inflation has made me a pauper as a retired colonel. I can't go anywhere. I don't get out.
Listen, family reunions are not dating opportunities. Okay.
No, they're not.
Since when? Since when? Sorry, did we lose Monty? Monty, okay, let me just go back to the institution of marriage a little bit there. You're a person of faith, and that's why I just give it a second before I quit bogarting the hour from everyone else. But, one of the things that many conservatives were upset about when the same-sex marriage topic came up is that a lot of people took offense to it. Not so much about keeping two people who care about each other apart, although that is an issue for some folks. But the real issue is that marriage itself, at its core, is a religious institution, not a state function. States sanction that to grant legal rights like parenting and inheritance and things like that. But it's a religious institution. Churches and people of faith came up with the institution of marriage to unite people to procreate. And when people call it marriage, some people have a major issue with that. For me personally, I had less of an issue if people were talking about what the government was conferring. That's a separate issue in a civil union. Is this an argument that resonates, or am I just, not getting enough oxygen at this hour because I'm thinking about my cousin?
It does resonate. I will tell you, I think that the liberty-loving person, when they hear I must get a permit to get married, should be asking a question: from whom? That's
from God. That's it.
that's the family, and from Almighty God. That's something you prayerfully consider, and you engage your family and the person that you're referring to getting married to. So I think that there's an overreach in that. I will tell you, most of my Democrat friends, they're okay with government being involved in every decision you make, from whether you take the jab, from whether you marry this person, that person, what you eat, what you're allowed to drive, all those kinds of things. But unfortunately, some of the Republicans are just as bad about it. We have allowed a generational failure in our pursuit of liberty. I have to believe that those 56 signers of that Declaration of Independence, if you gave them just an inkling of what we must get a permit to do today, they would be taking up arms again.
Absolutely.
And we've got to push back. We've got to be men of courage. We've got to be men of resolve, because we are trending in the wrong direction in the entire United States, and even my beloved state of Tennessee. And again, that goes back to why I think we need liberty and less government. I need less influence from my state government and my federal government into the decisions I make each and every day. And they shouldn't be trying to prevent behaviors. They should be worried about punishing the consequences or punishing the behaviors with a strong consequence. And, very basic thing there, I think. We have allowed government and those in government to start to think, well, if we could just decide who can or cannot carry a firearm, we can stop crime. No. Well, that goes back to that whole Jim Crow line of thought. Some nebulous with the intent to prevent is really just an opportunity for a tyrant to flex his muscles.
Indeed.
And that applies to marriage, guns, business license, whatever.
100% I'm with you on that one. So Todd, you and Monty are both Tennesseans, volunteers, and literally volunteers. You serve in uniform as well, and sought to serve in government. I have some good news for you tonight, folks. I was honestly concerned about the welfare and health of Dolly Parton. She made a video earlier in which she said she's not on her deathbed. She's got some procedures. So some good news for Tennesseans, because she's got Dollywood down there in Gatlinburg, and people love her in Tennessee. But I'm Todd. Before I hand it back to you, I don't know if Monty becomes governor, maybe he can do something helping out the Predators, making competitive again in the NHL. They look kind of sad these days. But Todd, why don't you take over?
Well, Tennessee's busy building a dome stadium for the Titans down there in Nashville. That's what's going on. Maybe that's where the money's being shifted over from the Preds. I don't know. But Monty, a few weeks ago, we saw, Governor Bill Lee up in Washington in the Oval Office behind, President Trump. And we also saw our senators behind him as he was talking about sending National Guard to Memphis. And you just talked about, we should just be working on that internally. And of course, Bill Lee's been in office for, going on 7 years this coming January. Why hasn't he done anything to tackle the Memphis problem thus far? And he just sat timidly behind the president as he talked about Tennessee and Memphis of being just, a horrible city run by Democrats running to the ground. Why hasn't Republicans in the state stepped up, especially our governor?
Well, I don't know if I have the why. I can tell you the what. He's a poor
Okay,
leader.
there we go.
And so, we were in Memphis, in West Tennessee last week campaigning. I was in Fayette County, Tippett County, and Shelby County. And so I door knocked down in Orange Mound. And I think that's District 10, and I think that's where the high crime rates are. And I think that a leader goes to where the fire is felt. And I think a leader goes down and asks those people, those firefighters, and we did a little impromptu fire hall, town hall.
There you go.
Those police officers, those mothers of police officers, those deputy sheriffs, and those people that live in those neighborhoods. Let's go ask them. And I would challenge. I want to challenge Governor Lee because I don't even know that he understands that, to be honest with you. But I would challenge the other people running for this office. Go down and listen to those people. I would challenge Senator Blackburn and Congressman Rose. Go to Memphis. Go door knock in Orange Mound. Listen to those people, because it's one of the three of us, and it's going to hurt their feelings to hear that. It's going to be me. I'm going to win this. They just don't realize that yet. But you need to understand how the people in Memphis have been hurting and how they feel abandoned, and how I have heard the folks in Nashville in government positions suggest that maybe that Memphis we should give it to Arkansas, which is such a stupid statement. That Memphis is the Tennessee Pearl on the Mississippi River. We should be looking for law and order and prosperity for Memphians and Shelby Countyans. We should be trying to, I did the whole energy policy thing in Tennessee, and it restructured the Energy Policy Council. We've got 1% of the nation's sweet crude refining capacity. Tennessee, that should be 2% and 3%, because those are good jobs for Memphians. That's good revenue that comes into the state through those jobs.
Right.
And there's fewer price perturbations due to the weather in Memphis, Tennessee, than there is in Lake Charles, Louisiana, or Houston, Texas. And so it just frustrates me that we have a group of men and women, as I don't know who really tells Governor Lee what to do, but there's a group of folks there that, I guess, lead by collective committee, and that's not what it takes. Anything two-headed's a freak. We've got to have somebody in charge. And right now, I just don't feel like we have that.
Right.
I'm going to, for Todd, for us Tennesseans, if you hire Fritz, I promise you won't like what I say some of the times. There will be times when I say things that just absolutely offend the hell out of it.
Well, truth hurts sometimes, right?
You're not going to have to worry about what I'm thinking, and you won't have to worry about me leading.
There you go. So, we've got a couple minutes here left. Whenever the attack ads come, and they're going to come, and they're going to be bought and paid for from Washington money and big lobbyists out of Nashville. What's the counter to that? What's Fritz going to do? What's Monty going to do? Is it going to be positive, countering with positive ads and et cetera? What is your reply to the attack ads that are going to come?
Well, two things. First, we're going to fight this on my terms, not theirs.
Good.
The British come into the colonies intending to put hundreds of redcoats on and just overwhelm the colonists. And General Washington decided to fight in a different manner.
Yep.
And I will do that. And I don't think it does any good for name calling. And I don't know how, politics is a rotten business. I don't know what that means. Where it will go, who knows? But I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to love those people that hate me. I may talk straight to them. I may offend them greatly with straight talk, but I'm going to keep loving them. I'm going to pray for them. And I'm going to pray for the benefit of Tennessee, and that they will, if they do send out lies and slams, and I'm going to pray that they'll repent, because that's a sin.
Absolutely. Money.
Facts. I'm going to stick to the facts, the voting records, what we've done with budgets, and how many years these people have served, and how they voted to certify an illegitimate president, and how they haven't stood up for our gun rights, and how they've overseen a federal debt that my grandkids are going to have a hard time digging out from under. I'm going to focus on those things.
Well, Monty, before the music plays us off for the top of the hour break, where can people find more about you?
Fritz4tn.com. That's FRITTS, the number 4tn.com. And hey, we answer the email. This is a very engaged. We have a team of nearly all volunteers. There's a couple folks that we're paying to do a couple things, but
right.
There's been an uprising of support in lovers of liberty that are volunteering their time, and I think we're going to shake Nashville to its roots next August.
There we go. Representative Monty Fritz running for governor of the great state of Tennessee. Our guest, we'll probably have him back on at some point very soon for those who missed the interview, but hopefully you'll catch it on the Common Sense Conservative, wherever we release it on podcasts, etc. Monty, we wish you well, sir, and I hope to see you in the coming weeks at some of your events. I've got them on my calendar.
All right. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, sir. All right. I'm going to jump off here, and we're going to take a break. We'll be back at the top of the hour. We're going to take you into the second hour, Colonel Chris Wyatt and John Grosvenor. But I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I'll see you guys maybe next week. I'll actually be in West Tennessee. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to actually be on next week, but I'll let you guys know.
Be careful, Memphis.
There we go. I actually will be in Memphis at Graceland next week, just so you know.
2 years by Hamas.
All right. See you guys.
See you. Hostages will be released very soon. ABC's Marcus Moore.
In the president's post on his social media page, he talks about the withdrawal of Israeli troops. And so they're going to have to establish how far those troops are going to withdraw, to what line, and then try to facilitate the exchange of the hostages.
And Hamas releasing a statement saying they've reached an agreement stipulating an end to the war on Gaza, Israeli forces withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, the entry of aid, and a prisoner exchange. President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff have been in Cairo for talks where a high-level Egyptian source saying the agreement was reached this evening. This is ABC News. A Connecticut woman is facing charges accused of trying to poison a man with antifreeze.
The 34-year-old victim telling police he drank a small amount of red wine back in August, went to bed, and woke up feeling sick. According to court documents, he then called his mother. And when she got to the home, he was slurring his words, staggering, and vomiting. Once at the hospital, doctors initially thought he was having a stroke, but realized he was showing signs of ethylene glycol poisoning, which is the ingredient in liquids such as antifreeze. He was admitted to the ICU and put on dialysis. Police confirming the wine tested positive for the substance.
ABC's Morgan Norwood. Hurricane Priscilla has weakened in the Pacific as it moves along the west coast of Mexico. Joan Kennedy, the former wife of Senator Edward Kennedy, has died. She was 89. Kennedy was a mother, a musician, and she became one of the first women to publicly acknowledge her struggles with alcoholism and depression. She's survived by 2 sons and 9 grandchildren. Dave Packer, ABC News.
Diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's on them. If you're a 50-year-old male, maybe a bit porky, and you may even have type 2 diabetes, $1 million of term insurance may only cost you about $200 a month. Call Term Provider. Speak with Big Lou at 800-859-3220. Big Lou will find a term life policy for you even if you have type 2 diabetes, are overweight, or have high blood pressure. Term Provider has helped thousands of people like you who think they can't afford term life insurance. To buy $1 million of affordable term life for you, all you need to do is call Big Lou at 800-859-3220. Lou will make sure the scales are tipped in your favor. Call 800-859-3220. Big Lou will answer your call and work to fit you into a term life policy that you can afford. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He's on meds too. Call 800-859-3220 or biglou.com.
The sky's not the limit, it's just the beginning. I'm Ed Mullen from Nashua Aerial Advertising. There's no better way to advertise your business and or message than high in the sky. How can you make your advertising budget work for you? By putting your ads up where they'll stand out. The sky is an uncluttered, impressive venue. You can put your message over a region or location to target your desired demographic. Put your ads where they're needed. We provide coverage over communities through Merrimack Valley, Greater Nashua, Manchester, Lowell, and points throughout south central New Hampshire and north central Mass. Summertime beaches, sporting events, races, fairs, and festivals are all ready-made for banner telling. For more information, please visit us online at NashuaAerialAdvertising.com. And remember, the sky's not the limit, it's just the beginning.
The views and opinions of the following show do not reflect those of WSMN, its owners, and/or associates.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just now tuning in, you're listening to Common Sense Conserves right here, WSMN 1590 on your AM dial and 95.3 on your FM dial. And you can catch us at wsmn.live. Hey, Chris, I see you made it back.
Yeah, no, I was here all along. I got distracted smashing trolls online.
Oh, the most fun.
Yeah, well, it's a hobby, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some really stupid people in this world. I have to tell you, it's it amazes me just how stupid some people are. It's incredible. I just someone did a video about another content creator, and they attacked that person, and I'm not even part of it. But then I wind up in the conversation being attacked, and idiots are talking about, they're talking to a third person whose video who made this, saying that, oh, you're the guy that knows everything. These guys don't know what they're talking about. I'm a historian. I'm a political scientist. I'm a university lecturer, a professor. I'm a 30 plus year intelligence analyst. I'm a published author in academic circles and popular press. I'm a radio commentator. I think I might know a little something about what I'm talking about, as opposed to some guy. They're describing me as the person that they're actually in favor of. It's just ludicrous. People will drink whatever Kool-Aid is put in front of them. There are some really, truly stupid people in this world. And it beggars the imagination how stupid people can be. But then I look around and I see, people who profess to be part of the gay community, Gays for Gaza. Are you morons? You do realize they'll drop you off a roof for your sexuality. Why are you got Gays for Gaza? And it's look, I'm sorry. I just, that break listening to the news gave me too much time to read nonsense from trolls, but we've got news to talk about. Nobody wants to hear about trolls tonight. They want to hear about what's going on. So, JB Pritzker, Mr. I've never refused a donut in my life, billionaire mouthpiece for the political left, running around lying about Trump, going after people because they're brown, just race hustling, slimy human being, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune. There you go. There's another reason why to dislike him. Any thoughts on what's going on with JB Pritzker and his arrogant attitude toward the president and his disdain for America's safety? Any thoughts, John?
Yeah, he's a stinking Democrat for one. But you see people in the Antifa movement there regarding him and his comments and stuff, like giving you kind of an idea that maybe he's one of these Democrats that they talk about that are kind of involved with Antifa and the activities of Antifa, No Kings organization and things like that.
I don't know. I just know that the guy's never said anything that makes any sense, even remotely, when I hear him talk. And everything he says is pretty much appalling, and it's anti-American. It's anything anti-Trump. The left really is not getting it, John. They are losing on all fronts. They think they're winning like with a shutdown. 65% of poll respondents are angry at the Democrats, not angry at the Republicans. This is not going well for them. And JB Pritzker and Brandon Johnson's, remember that Let's Go Brandon? Well, I guess we can apply it to this idiot in Chicago. Let's go, get going, Brandon. Maybe we could try that one. They really don't get this look. And I guess it's because they've allowed the city of Chicago to be flooded with so many criminal alien invaders that they think that they have a big enough constituency that they can spew this hatred of America and this danger to our society by letting people whose first act in entering our country is to commit a felony and violate our sovereignty. That's not a good neighbor. That's not a good person.
That's not a governor who's interested in protecting his own citizens. So,
no.
And it's interesting because the same guys like him saying Trump shouldn't be bringing in National Guard. It's un-American and it's a dictator. It shows what a dictator he is. But, I recall a certain law that we've talked about on the show many times, saying that Trump has the legal authority to operate with National Guard within state boundaries as long as the state's not enforcing the laws, even their own laws.
In fact, you're correct. The Insurrection Act gives him a lot of authority to deal with things. The only thing in the Insurrection Act is he has to warn the insurrectionist. And I don't know that he's done that. So he might run into some little legal trouble there. I'm not a legal expert on constitutional law, but I do know that under the Insurrection Act, the president is supposed to inform the insurrectionists and give them a chance to back down before we send in forces to go after them.
Well,
so,
he did kind of when he declared Antifa as terrorist organization, did he not?
Well, I think that's slippery ground. We got to be careful there because, in fact, it's not just Antifa. It's, a lot of these people that are out there now are just these pro-Palestinian America haters, anti-Christian scumbags that are out there demonstrating in favor of a terrorist state of Gaza run by Hamas. So they're not part of Antifa. So, I mean, it's just something they got to be very careful about.
Yeah, but the thing about it, Chris, is these guys are breaking laws. Okay, we had some. They're going after ICE left and right, and we're not talking about they're out there shaking their fists and they're holding up signs and they're saying "Hell no, we won't go" or whatever they chant nowadays. What they're doing is running up on ICE agents with their car, using their car as a weapon, then wielding a firearm and yelling and screaming at ICE agents, threatening them. They've tried to shoot ICE agents. They've attacked ICE agents. They're over in their Oregon doing it now. You got people over there saying, oh, no, Trump can't bring National Guard in, but they're at the headquarters of ICE. They're at the headquarters of DHS, and they're attacking these people. They're not peaceful protesters here. And at some point in time, if the governor is not willing to step up, and Trump has already given enough warning with the governor saying, we're bringing in the National Guard. We've all across this country have heard it. So now when he brings in the National Guard, they've had fair warning, man. They're violating laws, and they're in the process of violating laws. And if the governor's not willing to step up and make sure, or your local police chief and your mayors aren't willing to step up and make sure their laws are enforced, somebody's got to do it. These same people on the left that keep saying that we got to take your guns away. And I saw somebody comment here about you need to rethink your naive approach to gun policy. Pablo commented on that there on your YouTube channel. And the thing about it is, it's not a naive approach. We have a constitutional right. The solutions need to be viable to our constitutional rights. But there's no solution when mayors and governors and people in authoritative positions refuse to enforce their own laws and allow this to go on, allow the threat of violence, allow the threat of life to go on, and then turn around and say, oh, we need to take away your guns because those are acts of violence and those things lead to violence and people die from them. I got a big, fat middle finger for those people.
Well, the number of fatalities from automobile accidents far exceeds the number from firearms every year. So shall we ban automobiles?
It's relatively close, I think, right around 40,000 a year.
Well, no, both are much lower than that. It was 50,000 automobile deaths per year 30 years ago. It's down in the 20s now, and the number of people murdered in this country is in the teens, in the thousands, compared to what it used to be. So, but the point is that should we take away cars? Yeah. Should we take away cars? I mean, it's just stupid, and it doesn't matter. This is an idiotic argument. First off, let's pretend that we're all in favor of disarming America. How are you going to do it? 450 million firearms in a country where nearly 200 million people are licensed firearm owners.
Well, they've been do that. They've been in the process of doing it, Chris. You want to buy a fully automatic firearm, a weapon, a rifle? You can't do it. They've taken that right away already, and it's you're talking about ebbing or erosion of our rights.
You were talking about the erosion of Second Amendment rights. I'm talking about the existing ownership of firearms. 450 million firearms in the hands of Americans that we know about. They're legal. How are you going to go about confiscating 450 million firearms? There's going to be an awful lot of dead revenuers.
You can't when SCOTUS has already overruled most of their bills that they passed that were only, bump stocks and
John, I got you, but you also cannot abridge the right to free speech or the press. But the Biden regime did it nonetheless. You cannot spy on members or citizens without a predicate basis for doing it. Yet we know that 8 senators were spied upon by the corrupt Biden regime in the biggest scandal in American history, and nobody's talking about it.
Yeah.
Nobody. None of these fake media outlets are talking about it. They want to talk about Trump putting troops into cities. It is all about the crimes of the Biden regime in violation of the First Amendment to the Constitution. And that's what we need to be talking about. And James Comey needs to be convicted and sentenced to wearing orange jumpsuits. Orange is the new color. It is new black. Is something going on outside? You got gunshots? What's going on? I see you turn around looking there.
No, I keep looking at the clock. What it is because the way the board's built up this week, I don't have outro music and stuff, so I kind of try to keep it in my head how I'm going to handle it at the end of the show. That's all.
Yeah, so where I was going with the firearms is to take the firearms away. Then, just like Berlin and Paris, they'll use cars to run over people, or London on London Bridge.
Yeah, knife attacks went up.
Or knife attacks, just like London. And then they ban knives, so you can't carry knives. It becomes reach a level of insanity. You cannot stop this by taking things away because murderers, criminals will find other methods to do it. And then citizens are unable to defend themselves. And that's what they want. These morons who cannot put two sticks together and get any spark think that they can control human behavior by taking things away. It does not work that way. At some point, people just beat each other to death. There are psychopaths who have no remorse in society in every country. There are people who do not care about the sanctity of human life. We know this because they support abortion. They happily murder children in the womb because they support that. They don't care about human life, and they think they can dictate. These people are evil and must be excised from the body politic. Legitimately, not taking them out.
Yeah. I don't mind mentioning that Australia here recently, the 5th of October this year, just had a mass shooting, 18 people injured. Did they
But John, they don't have guns. But they don't have guns. They took all the guns away.
Yeah.
And what did they do when they took the guns away? During the COVID scam, when 650,000 people showed up every week to protest in Melbourne, the cops came out with truncheons and beat lawful, peaceful protesters on the streets. They beat women. I have the video of it. I covered it live as it unfolded every week in Australia. That's what happens when governments have the sole use of deadly force. When they have the only one with the power, they abuse it. It doesn't matter what country it is.
You mean like they did to Canadians when they were protesting in 2022 and
the truck drivers?
Yeah.
Yes.
And they come out there and stomped them with horses and run them down and pretty much walked all over them and then violated. Well, I don't know. I can't say they violated the rights because I don't know what the rights are in Canada. But if they were anything equal to the United States, they would have been violating the rights left and right. But poor Canadians don't have those same rights as far as
no, they don't. Canada's in a bad way. Patriotic Canadians are kind of stuck. Lost. I was in Canada a few years ago for their celebration of their 175th anniversary, something like that. Was it 150 or 150? I think it was whatever. No, once been because 1867, I think, is when they became a Dominion. Anyway, but it's a major anniversary in the history of Canada. You'd never know it. I couldn't find anything celebrating it, honoring their history. They were ashamed of their history. They didn't tell it. They're proudly talk about how they stole the land from the First Nations. Oh God, that's vomit-inducing every time you hear it. We proudly stand here as colonizers, having stolen this land from the indigenous First Nation people of the made-up tribe that never existed and didn't live here. But we still admit that we stole the land from them. But we're not going to give it back, so don't bother. But we do this virtue signaling nonsense to show we're good, honest leftist morons. Oh, it gets so.
I despise self-loathing. If people read history, they would understand. It's not just the United States.
It's the world. It's the nature of human.
Weren't what they think they were in a lot of regards or regarding a lot of matters. You go to Jackson, that thing was horrible. The Trail of Tears and stuff like that. Yeah, we've had that's on Jackson.
John, and who was that? Andrew Jackson, the first president from the Democratic Party. Yep.
Yeah. Oh no, I don't mind. And there was some that followed him too. They did erroneous things, and that's what it means to be in power. And that's why it's important for us to recognize history and see what things have gone wrong and stuff that's happened today with people like Joe Biden and say, look, we've got to use some common sense when we're voting for a president of the United States. We just can't get any Yahoo in office because they've got a great deal of power. I mean, like if you look at U.S. Code 10, U.S. Code Section 253, the president has a lot of power to raise the militia against its citizens. If he's wielding that thing recklessly, that's not going to be good for us. But, if you got somebody who's responsible as president, we're being able to wield his power responsibly. And Trump has shown that. He has shown that when district courts moved against him in Oregon, I'll respect the law. You made a judgment, and we'll see what we can do to get around it. If we can't, we can't. If we can, great, we'll work around it. Or we'll appeal it to a higher court. This is what he does every time,
Yeah, look, it's the thing is the difference between us and the political left is that we'll be honest about things. I mean, who was the first Republican president? It was Abraham Lincoln. But Lincoln was far from perfect. Lincoln violated the Constitution by suspending habeas corpus on multiple occasions and detaining people just on the basis of suspicion as if they were guilty. That is not acceptable. They rounded up lawmakers in Maryland from the House of Delegates and put them in prison just because they were talking about secession. And that wasn't the government's right to do. They had not led an insurrection. They were simply talking about something that had been yet to be clearly defined by the Constitution and existing law, whether states can secede or not. No, so Lincoln wasn't perfect, and we talk about that. Also, Lincoln gets all the credit for freeing the slaves. Lincoln didn't free any slaves. The Emancipation Proclamation was simply a tool to weaken the Confederate military because it stated in areas under the control of the Union Army, anyone in bondage was now considered free and protected by the Union Army. Well, much of the South wasn't in Union hands until 1865, so slavery continued. That's why this whole thing with this made up, bogus, idiotic, race pandering Juneteenth holiday is ridiculous. If people want to celebrate the end of slavery in this country, chattel slavery, then the date must be the 6th of December, because that's when the 13th Amendment was ratified by the states, not an insurrection in 1865, just months after the end of the Civil War. Chattel slavery ended legally in this country, and not some fictitious date when a Union general rocked up someplace in Texas and said, "You're all free now." Yet 75% of the soil of Texas was still under the institution of slavery. These people are historically ignorant. The harm they do is unbelievable, and the race hustling and pandering they do is disgusting. And it's the same thing with the Second Amendment, people that hate the Second Amendment, and the same thing with these pro-murder children crowd. They're historically ignorant, they're shameful, they're morally bankrupt, and they're a disgrace to humanity. There, I said it.
I like when people make comparisons to Chicago population of 9 million people, Switzerland population of 9 million people. Now compare mass shootings rate and shootings overall. Does Switzerland have politicians running out there encouraging violence? Because we've heard it from Maxine
America
Waters.
does.
I mean, you're sitting there trying to tell us about these comparisons, but I'm sorry. We've actually seen our U.S. politicians on the left encouraging physical violence, encouraging rioting in the streets, though they don't say it directly, like go out there and burn down buildings, because they can't, because they'd be held accountable. But they've encouraged it time and time again. We've heard it out of their mouths. We know what they meant by what they've said. They stand by it. They stand behind it. And enough is enough of these dirty politicians.
So we talk about a lot about Chicago, and Chicago is bad. It's better than Memphis, though, but it's worse than Nashville. It's 17 murders per 100,000 residents, triple the United States rate, triple. So Trump is right. It's a war zone, and so is Nashville, and so is Memphis. And what are these things have in common? Democratic mayors, Democratic governors for decades. That's one thing they have in common. They have many other things in common, but that's one of the biggest problems they have. 100%. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. And people want to deny it. They want to dance around it and be fancy pants about stuff. They're simply wrong.
Wait,
a major
did
problem.
we hear Tim Walz, as governor of Minnesota, talk about opening up the window and enjoying the sounds of the burning buildings or whatever it was? He was like implying that the violence that went on in his own street, his wife. Okay, the violence that went on in their own streets was something to be admired. Something to be taken in as something good to have happen. I mean, that's not what we would expect in leadership for politicians. If you want to go, well, we need, Chris, we don't need politicians. We need statesmen. That's what we need. We don't have statesmen anymore. We have politicians, and these politicians are encouraging rioting in the streets. A statesman would stand up and do what's right for the country.
Well, some people feel the need to flee from our great, wonderful country. They talk about it all the time. When the Democrats destroy this country and undermine our legitimacy and our sovereignty and put us at the mercy of people who are violently opposed to our cultural norms, mores, and values and our laws, and try to colonize us from within because of our generosity, they stay. But then, they threaten to leave when people like Trump or Bush become president. Well, one of them actually left. Rosie O'Donnell said she's living in self-imposed political exile, and she decided to move to Ireland amid the ongoing feud she has with President Trump. And here's some really good news for Rosie. She said she's applying and about to be approved for Irish citizenship because her grandparents were from Ireland. And that's all you need. Well, good. Stay there and renounce your American citizenship, and then you just ban her from coming to the country. We don't ever need to see her horrible face again. What a nasty, nasty person Rosie O'Donnell is.
So who do the people of Ireland write their nasty letter to regarding Rosie O'Donnell moving over there and taking up space?
The Irish people have been neutered. 25% of the country is overrun with illegal immigrants who've flooded into the country. Irish are being abused left and right by their government. Their cities are falling apart. Their residences are turning into ghettos. The streets of Dublin and all these other cities are nothing but third world crap holes now. Ireland is gone. It's so sad to see. The Irish who have immigrated all over the world have lost their homeland. It's in the process of disappearing, and it's all for passports convenience. And the Irish politicians are scumbags who've sold the Irish people down the river and ought to be, taken out and tarred and feathered by their own people, most likely, I would expect at some point.
Well, they've tried to do it here. That's the whole thing. They've tried to do the same thing here, didn't they? Open up the borders.
Of course. We've put a stop to it for the time being. We just need to make sure that Democrats don't get in power in the next election cycle and keep this under control. Otherwise, we get more Jack Smiths who illegally spy on members of Congress to go on a fishing expedition to try to find a trumped up predicate to get a warrant to get criminal charges against people who've committed no crimes.
You don't happen to have a list of those 9, do you?
Well, it was Marsha Blackburn. She was one of them. Ron Johnson was another. South Carolina's Lindsey Graham, and there's several others, and one member of the House of Representatives. Of course, we already knew they did this to my representative, Scott Perry, who has had to spend over $1 million to defend himself over bogus allegations that he was involved in insurrection that never took place. This is what they do. They use lawfare and the power of the purse of the government, which has endless power, taking our tax dollars and burying us in debt, to prosecute people for crimes that are fictitious and never existed. I mean, look no further than Jack Smith. Look no further than Fannie Willis. Look no further than what's that Tuballard there, Alvin Bragg in New York. Couldn't think of his name earlier today. In New York, all these fictitious prosecutions against Trump over made-up nonsense, trying to bankrupt people. Trump is a billionaire. He was able to withstand it and hold on there and fight. But the rest of us can't do that. When the government comes with false charges, most of us have no choice, like General Flynn, but, to take a plea bargain, over a crime we never committed in order to avoid jail time. But then you're called a criminal. And that's what they do. This is abuse. And this is what this criminal regime of Biden did. And the same thing happened under Obama. Obama spied on New York Times and Washington Post reporters who were writing stories that were negative about them, but accurate. They didn't like it. And they also did the same thing to other members of society in violation of the law, in violation of the Constitution and the First Amendment. It's sick. It's twisted. And the fact that the media, who are actually the ones spied on, don't even scream and squawk about this shows you just how complicit they are in this oppression of the American people. They're complicit in it. And they do it for money and for attention. They're disgraceful human beings. They're Jimmy Kimmels. That's how we'll describe evil people now. Disgusting evil people. They're just Jimmy Kimmels. They're Kimmels. You know how like in Harry Potter, the Muggles? Well, these are Kimmels.
Absolutely.
I've just coined that phrase.
But the
Muggles
in Harry Potter were being discriminated against by the purebloods. Remember?
No. Muggles are just people, the people of no magic whatsoever. The idiots are just Kimmels. So we're going to call idiots Kimmels from now on. They're just Kimmels.
Yeah, I got you, man. Yeah, that's a good way to put it for
I like it.
I'm
going to use it. They're just Kimmels. I'll use that tonight on my broadcast. Oh my goodness. Hey, apparently Elise Stefanik is catching up to the evil Kathy Hochul in the race for the governorship of New York. I thought she was way behind, but apparently she's closed the gap. A new poll shows that New York, his 2026 governor race, is only a 5-point race now. Yeah. Wow. Elise Stefanik is at 43% and Hochul at 48%. But when voters learned that Hochul endorsed Zoran Mamdani for mayor, Stefanik leads Hochul. So that needs to be reinforced. The Republican Party in New York and voters need to be made aware of the fact that Hochul is endorsing the fascist Islamist mayoral candidate for New York City, Zoran Mamdani, because that flips it around and gives Elise Stefanik a 0.5-point lead in the poll of the same people who said they would have voted for Hochul until then they found out that idiot scumbag voted for Zoran Mamdani. I think that's important, and they need to hone that message and drive it home before this race is over.
It says a lot about where her principles lie.
Well, look at Nancy Pelosi. You've got this idiot in Virginia who's running for, what is it, he's running for some office in Virginia. And he talks about how he fantasizes about, killing Republicans. He says this. And Nancy Pelosi says, well, on balance, he's the better candidate. Really? I think he's a bit unbalanced. Maybe she's getting some mental care.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of a strange thing to say, especially if you want to run for office. You don't find people on the right saying these things. I haven't heard anybody.
I haven't either. I don't hear Republicans inciting violence and calling people. I don't ever recall a Republican presidential candidate or sitting president running for office suggesting that his opponent should be assassinated. But Joe Biden did that last year.
Wait, you mean put a bullseye on his back and assassinate him?
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened days later.
Yeah, that's what I mean earlier. We were talking about that. They incite violence and then claim the right is the ones being violent. The right are the fascists, but when they're doing the fascist things.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable what they do. These people are evil, immoral, vile, repulsive, anti-human reprobates, and they need to be exposed for that. They need to be exposed for that. Notice that I didn't bring faith, God, religion in any of that. That's just common sense and morality. These people have no morality, none whatsoever. They're just evil spawn. Yeah.
That's about the sum of it. Yeah. So this shutdown, man. What do you think?
The shutdown. Well, I'm not losing any sleep over it. I was surprised I got paid. I'll tell you that, John. I was out west and, of course, 2 hours behind here in the Mountain Time Zone. So after midnight, about 1 o'clock in the morning here, 11 o'clock there, I went and checked my bank account and I didn't have any money. So I figured, well, I'm not getting paid. But like a smart and responsible adult, I planned for this contingency because I expect it to happen. And so I paid my mortgage 10 days early and paid all my utility bills, the things that hurt your credit or hurt your credit rating very quickly, before the month even ended. And then I was able to position some savings around so that just in case. Anyway, the next day I actually got my pay. I was a bit surprised, my retirement pay, although they're saying that military aren't going to get their mid-month pay here on the 15th. I don't know if that's going to happen or not next week, but I was a bit surprised. I'm not losing any sleep over it. It has had a tangible impact on me, but a minor one so far, in that I went to Craters of the Moon National Monument on my way back. And when I got there, headed back to Sun Valley, I'd been there the week prior when it was open. The visitor center was closed because they couldn't have it open because they're non-essential. The park was, the monument was open. You could drive in and you could actually go camp and not have to pay anything and pay no entry fees. So, it didn't really affect me other than that, but it does affect a lot of people. I see that Trump is being very clever. He's using the money that's pouring in from the tariffs to fund WIC for low-income mothers and children, and he's also going to use it to compensate some of the farmers who are suffering because the Chinese are playing like fools over soybean imports. They're refusing to import it, trying to cripple U.S. farmers. So Trump is going to use some of those tariffs to subsidize. I don't like subsidies, but I understand why this is happening, and I generally am wholeheartedly against this sort of thing. But I empathize with the farmers because they didn't know this was going to happen when they planted this. The expectation is Chinese would buy it like they always do, and the Chinese are just being jerks about it. So Trump is trying to ensure they don't have multi-billion-dollar losses. So, okay, the tariffs, I'm okay with that. But the Trump administration is coming up with creative ways to keep essential services going that aren't really considered essential services by the government during this shutdown. So I'm not losing sleep over the shutdown. And as far as I'm concerned, if they, as long as it isn't hurting people, they can let it run as long as they want because there's no superfluous or ridiculous spending. They can't make bad decisions and waste money. Now, a lot of that money will be wasted once it comes back because they have back pay from people furloughed, yada, yada, yada. But many of the dumb decisions, money being spent, won't be spent. And that's a good thing.
Well, there you go. But why are we shut down? That's the fact of the matter. I mean, because the Republicans won't move on subsidizing certain healthcare and stuff like that. Obamacare was passed quite some time ago. They recognized it was flawed, said they were going to fix those flaws, never did anything to improve anything on it. And we have been subsidizing Obamacare in the sum of billions a year since 2012. If it can't pay for itself as a business, then it's a flawed business to begin with. You know what I mean? Why do we have such a thing? Why do we not have just a private enterprise again? Whereas it's not self-sustaining.
Yeah, well, the problem with this is that the Unaffordable Care Act is a scam, and it's always been a scam. And the American public is gullible and fell for the scam because Barry Hussein Obama told us that he was going to make healthcare affordable for Americans, that nobody would pay more than X amount of money for premiums. And he lied to us. And we knew he lied. And some of us said that he lied. And the public just drank the Kool-Aid and believed the nonsense. The immediate impact of the Affordable Care Act was you cannot deny coverage as an insurance company for pre-existing conditions, which meant that companies would be bankrupted by people with chronic conditions that cost hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to treat on an annual basis. And companies could not refuse it. Then, of course, we had the whole religious nonsense where the state intruded into religious beliefs in violation of the First Amendment freedom of religion by forcing Catholic charities to pay for abortions, which they're not into. So this Unaffordable Care Act, the first thing it did was it corrupted the insurance market. The pharmaceuticals and the insurance companies were dumb. They thought they gamed the system and they were going to benefit from this, when in fact they set themselves up for misery. And as a consequence, they dramatically increased the cost of insurance premiums because they had to cover 10 million illegal aliens. They had to provide health care to people who they should not be providing health care to because they can't afford it and they have pre-existing conditions. And 20 million working Americans were thrown off of health insurance because it was no longer feasible for these health insurance companies to allow the premiums that were as low as they were, and their employers refused to pay the higher premiums. So 20 million hardworking Americans were denied health care because of Barack Hussein Obama, a story that is still not talked about to this day, and it drives me nuts. It was an insurance market scam. The question I raised was, I was about to go into surgery right after this stupid law was passed, and I was going in for gallbladder surgery in Annapolis, and I was talking to them, trying to be lighthearted. I told the anesthesiologist, I said, listen, instead of fixing tort reform and the ridiculous settlements that come from malpractice, and instead of actually increasing the number of doctors or medical schools or nurses or clinicians or things that we need in this country, all we've done is screw up the insurance market. And so, Doc, if you screw up my anesthesia, my errors will sue you for every penny you're worth. And the Indian doctor standing here next to Dr. Rainieri, my surgeon, said, I'm not understanding what he's talking about. My point was that because there was no tort reform, we're going to get $60 million if you make me brain dead in the surgery. That was the point. Anyway, the point of the whole story is that the Unaffordable Care Act is a scam. It remains a scam. It should be abolished. The government has no role in healthcare. There is nothing in this Constitution that grants the government the right to oversee, regulate, control, or pay for healthcare. It is a socialist scam, and it has destroyed the free market and perverted the health insurance market in this country and perverted healthcare. I got my bill the other day for when I went to see these clowns that want to rip my bone out and put plastic in my hip because they make $40,000 off of it, not because I need it. That's their solution. Surgeon, hammer, oh, there's a nail. We're going to take your hip. Well, I refused. Well, they charged $200 or $300 and some dollars. And then the government's insurance under TRICARE agreed to pay $122, and I was billed $38. So the actual payment to that provider was about 60% of what they billed. Somebody has to eat that cost. You know who eats it? The people that pay cash. The people pay out of their pocket. They pay the full price because of the government interfering in the marketplace. And it's perverted the entire system and has done it for decades. Medicare, Medicaid are abominations, and so is the Unaffordable Care Act. It's disgusting.
It seems like the left keeps wanting to create these social programs, create a socialist democracy, I guess, as they call it. And show me one that's ever worked. Social Security doesn't work. No. Medicaid, Medicare's had its issues, and now Obamacare, which is extension of Medicaid, Medicare, and
it perverts those markets. But to be fair, John, I'm not in favor of Social Security, but Social Security, as it was presented, of course, the Roosevelt regime lied to the Supreme Court, said it wasn't a tax. Then they were challenged after it was approved to stay. There was a challenge saying that it's not a tax and they can't do that. And then they said, yeah, it is a tax. We have the power to tax. So they won both cases on a stacked Supreme Court. That's why we have 9 justices instead of a dozen now. But to be fair, the Social Security program was presented as a safety net for people who didn't have retirement. But it quickly morphed into an abomination in which Americans are hoodwinked because they're uninformed and thinking that Social Security is your retirement. Ladies and gentlemen, the max amount of money you get off Social Security doesn't cover many people's mortgages in this country. You can't survive off of Social Security. And if you make more than $20,000 or $10,000, you get taxed on it. You've already paid taxes. That's what created Social Security. You shouldn't be paying taxes on the benefits. But because the 1986 Social Security agreement that the Reagan administration came up with Congress, they doubled the rate of taxation. And they began taxing Social Security benefits for people means testing. Well, it's not means testing. You're stealing my money. Stop stealing my money. But it is not a retirement plan. It is a supplemental. So you are responsible for developing your own retirement plan, whether it's saving, investing, individual retirement accounts, 401k plans with an employer, or simply putting money in a sock drawer for a rainy day. That is your personal responsibility. And we have made Americans lazy, ignorant, stupid, uninformed, and poor because they think they're getting a retirement program, which doesn't exist. Social Security is a supplement. And quite frankly, I, up until the age of 50, said I will sign a legal document and abrogate all my rights to collect any penny of Social Security in my life ever, as long as you stop taking money out of my check. Up until the age of 50, I said that consistently, and I would have done it because I can make more money investing that money. And if I'd had those 15 to 17 years from the age of 50 to 67 to invest that money, I would have created a nest with my acumen and my experience in investing. I would have created a nest for myself far greater than the entire lifetime of Social Security benefits, even if I lived to be 135. Trust me, I did the math. The government is not the solution. The government is the problem. The role of government is to ensure a level playing field so people don't take advantage and cheat other people, and to protect our sovereignty and to protect our citizens. That is it. That is it. Giving COVID jabs, determining school controls at the national level, that is not the role of government. Determining healthcare, interject yourself in retirement funds. This is an abomination. This is socialism on steroids. This is the destruction of the American dream. This is contrary to what the founders said. It runs antithetical to the Federalist Papers and to common sense, and is a disgrace. The fact that most Americans don't even know what common sense is or Thomas Paine, and don't know what the Federalist Papers are and the Anti-Federalist Papers are, and have never read any of them, is a disgrace to this nation. We need to go back to educating this illiterate population about our civics and our society. I mean, when I come back from Tunisia in 2001, a year after the election, people are like, Bush stole the election. What do you mean stole the election? Well, the Supreme Court gave it to him. No, they didn't. The U.S. Supreme Court overruled the out-of-control rogue Florida Supreme Court, which violated Florida's law and its constitution by continually recounting votes. They had a deadline. They failed to meet it under the Florida law. The Supreme Court was called in to say they must adhere to their own law. If you don't like the law, then change it. But you should have changed it before the election. So people a year later still saying Bush and the Supreme Court stole the election. And then people saying, well, but Al Gore's the president. I said, why? Well, he got more votes. That doesn't matter. This is how ignorant our electorate is, much of it. It doesn't matter who gets the most votes. It matters who adheres to the system and achieves most votes in the Electoral College. All but 2 states, it's first past the post. So if you go to California and you got 54 electoral votes and you get 1,000,001 votes, and the other guy gets 1 million, you get all 54 votes, he gets none. But if you go to Maine or to Nebraska, it's done on apportionment, and that's their system. That's how they do it. And people don't know this. It's shocking. It's disgraceful. It's sad. No wonder this country was in such jeopardy and peril before Donald Trump came back. It's unbelievable how ignorant our society is. Well, I've lost all my viewers, but too bad.
Yeah, you keep calling people ignorant. I guess they might not stick around. I don't know, but trust me, folks. He's not exactly putting that reflection on you, the listener, but he's just saying in general. Yeah, we see it all the time. Things that people do, and it's kind of like I was recently talking to somebody. I see people saying, for trucking, we need a CDL license, but those RVers over there don't. So now the anger is turned on the people on RVs because they don't have to abide by the same qualifications as a truck driver does. It's like, wait a minute, if you're going to do this, what you're going to do is create regulations for that poor sap, but it's not going to alleviate any of your pain. So why do that?
So John, by the same token, the lawn care guys that pull trailers with their riding lawnmowers on the back and their yard maintain, they don't have special license. We should make them license. And people who pull their boats down to the dock and put it into the lake, they should have special license. I mean, why do people think taking liberty is a solution to everything? Look, I'm not a libertarian, but I can certainly empathize with them.
That's why we're in this position, because people do think that, because they get upset because they're being oppressed, right? So now they want the next guy to be oppressed. They all want this guy, turn around and say, well, if I have to take a drug test, why isn't he over there taking a drug test? It's like, come on, man.
Well, John, there are merits to government regulating, controlling things for the safety and a commercial driver's license, as someone not possessing one, makes sense to me if commercial driver's license require you to be tested in how to park those big rigs, how to operate them in adverse conditions, how to drive them on inclines and down mountains, how to use air brakes and retarders and all these things. If that's part of the qualification for CDL, I'm in favor of it, because
that's the problem. They got a minimum training, right? But they didn't put all this stuff in there. They train a person in 2 weeks that abides by federal regulations, and all of a sudden they're out there not knowing what they're doing on the road.
Okay, so what I'm saying,
they don't really regulate for safety in the first place.
Well, but that should be if they're going to regulate, that's what they should be concerned about, protecting the public.
You think so? Yeah.
So I mean, are you okay? Would you agree with me that the things I just said are just common sense?
No. I go down to DC and I talk to people at the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. They don't hear me saying, "Hey, you know what? Get rid of those hazmat rules. We don't need hazmat rules." Simple general things, truck inspections. You should be inspecting your equipment every day, all the time.
Absolutely. We do it. We do it in the Army. Every time we do a rest halt, we get out and make sure everything's still tied down, nothing's falling off. We check our lights, we check our brakes. I mean, it's just common sense when you're operating a dangerous item like a heavy vehicle, like a tank or an artillery piece or a truck or a semi. I mean, these things are dangerous. People need to be, and by the same token, frankly, people should be checking their POVs. I've only once in the past 6 years had a safety what I would consider a safety violation when getting my car inspected. Why is that? Because I check my lights, I check my turn signals at least every couple weeks. I go out there at a minimum and check them. And this time I missed one light because the bulb burnt out within the 2 weeks before I went to get inspected. So I'll say I had a gig, but that's the first time in 6 years. I guarantee you many people have to get their cars inspected. You probably have to replace headlights or turn signals or get the horn repaired or replace their tires because they're not maintaining their vehicles. This is a responsibility. And I don't have a problem with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania forcing me to get my vehicle inspected every year. I did have a problem with Maryland making me get an emissions test because it was a joke. It was an absolute joke. It was a waste of time. I used to have to drive to Maryland and get my emissions test to renew my registration. If they want to inspect it for safety, I wouldn't have had a problem with it, but the emissions was a joke. Pennsylvania also has emissions, but it's part of the roadworthiness of the vehicle. And I think that's fine because it's an effort to protect society at large, and it is a minimal step, and it's not invasive in my view. When the government becomes invasive, that's a problem.
People live busy lives and they don't think about these things. They don't categorize these things and develop. In the old days, you used to have to check your oil every day or every week in your car. You check your tire pressure and stuff. People get out of practice of that because things got improved over time, but it's still, you can run your car low on oil, but if you're not keeping track of it, because you can blow a seal or something, and people don't think about that. Simple tricks, man. You're pulling up to a building that's got a glass front, throw on your headlights, bright lights, right turn signal, left turn signal. You saw it all happen right there. Back up to it next time and do your brake lights,
Yeah.
Just dumb stuff like that. It's nighttime. You can check all your lights sitting in your car. Basically, you see them all light up. If they're not lighted up on one side, you might get out and look next time. But, it's just simple tricks, things you can do while you're in the vehicle, while you're driving the vehicle. But
yeah,
it's not on people's minds. They're more thinking about, hey, I can't wait to get that party. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a lot of dancing, a lot of drinking, have a lot of fun, and not give them one iota of
about
concern
safety.
about the vehicle they're in.
A vehicle is a deadly weapon. I treat my automobiles and the way I drive as if it's a deadly weapon because it can kill people. And you don't have to be going very fast. You can go 20 miles an hour and kill somebody. I've been struck by a motor vehicle in a parking lot at about 15 miles an hour. Fortunately, I was stepping forward and it hit my leg that was going forward and just threw me off balance and spun me around. I hit the ground. So, I mean, if I'd been planted, I might have had serious injury. But, I mean, you can kill someone at that speed. And I don't think people realize it. They're just ignorant of it or not paying attention to it. But a funny thing happened to me, John, related to cars today. I'd like to share this with you. It's a little embarrassing. So, of course, my car has this, when you touch the handle, it activates and unlocks the door. Okay. So I got out of my car to wash it. I hadn't washed my car in some time and I've been gone. It looks pretty nasty. So I went to, the wand, the brush, brushed it all off. And then I locked the car and had the key in my pocket. I came up to the edge of the car when I was using the brush and my hand brushed up against the handle and I didn't realize it. And I come around like, why are the lights on? Because the lights all come on when you
yeah.
So I'm like, damn it, what's going on here? So I ignored it for a minute. And I'm like, was it on all the time? Did I leave the headlights in the on instead of the automatic position, or what's going on here? And then I kept going because you're on a timer. It's like $4 for 2 minutes. Am I rushing it, or 3 minutes, or no, 4 minutes? 4 minutes is $4, $1 a minute. So I'm rushing, getting soap on there, and then I switch over to the light rinse with more soap. And then I was on the other side and the lights came on again. I'm like, what's going on here? I didn't realize I was touching the door handle. And then finally I realized that's what the problem was. But, it's anyway. So sometimes
I think you told me you accidentally locked the keys in the car doing it.
Oh, no. Well, the good news with that is it was walking distance. I could have walked home. Would have taken me 45 minutes with my hip now, but I could have walked home and got the spare key and got in there. But no, it's funny. I like these newer cars that you just can't lock the car with the key inside. You can't walk, it's nice. Anyway.
Yeah, no, mine does that. I found out too. I got a Lexus and for the wife. And recently I realized, because when I went to Florida, I went to lock up the car, but every time I touch the door handle, it unlocked. Oh, why is it doing that? I want the car locked. Why does it keep unlocking? I thought something was wrong. Then I realized I had the fob in my pocket.
If you're anal retentive about making sure your doors are locked and you've got one of those entry vehicles like that, the secret is to go to the passenger's door and try to pull in the handle and make sure it's locked. If you drive the driver's door, you just unlock it every time.
Yeah. So
I learned that a long time ago.
Discovery here recently, here last week, same thing. And it was throwing me off till I come to my senses, realize it was the key fob in my pocket. And
exactly. So I mean, but it's things change. Hey, have you seen what's going on with McDonald's? People are upset. $7.75 for an egg McMuffin.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Oh wow. That's right.
Where'd I go?
That's insane. No, but apparently that's the case in a lot of places in America. And if you want the meal, it's like $8.49 or something like that. It's insane.
So
You know,
just for the sandwich only is like almost $8, but
Yeah,
for a couple
yeah.
bucks more, you get the whole meal.
So I saw where they did the math and they put it in nominal dollars. In other words, inflation adjusted dollars from when the Big Mac was, or the Egg McMuffin was introduced, was 63 cents. Those 63 cents today would be, I think they said was $3.49. I think it is something like that. So if you were
Yeah.
paying the same price, it would be $3.49, but it's more than 200% higher. We're being fleeced and gouged here. Ridiculous. It's insane.
Well, we are, and a lot of that has to do with COVID too. You realize a lot of these McDonald's didn't get hit so hard as your local diners and restaurants did, but a lot of people took a hit for the couple of the years there during COVID, and I think prices went up because they to survive after COVID. Yeah, they got the government money and all that stuff, but to survive after COVID, they had to increase rates higher than just inflationary.
Oh, but that didn't cover it. I mean, first off, that government money, of course, whether I want to be or not, I'm sort of in the hospitality business because I'm a commander of VFW. We have a canteen, which is a restaurant and bar, and that destroyed us. I mean, we've been on the verge of bankruptcy multiple times because of the debt that piled up because of the lockdown and not being allowed to have the place open, but the mortgage and the bills kept coming. And the money the government was supposed to reimburse us for expenses for paying employees during that time, we just got the second payment from that this summer from 2020.
Oh, wow.
The fact that we're still in business is a miracle. I think what they did is they held that money and hoped a lot of places would go bankrupt, so they never had to pay it. But we managed to survive long enough to get that payment. And it was not insignificant. So, I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, the price of inputs is just so high. The one thing that we've been able to keep stagnant, unfortunately, is wages. Although they've inflated a little bit lately, but we have some control over that. But then you just don't get reliable employees because people want to make more money, understandable, because inflation's so high. But the inputs are just ridiculous what you charge for food. I mean, it's just insane. I mean, I go to the store and look and they want $8 for a bag of chips. I mean, are you high? That's $1.69. I'm not paying you $8 for
Yeah.
that.
Actually, I was sitting there looking at some things like bread.
Yeah.
I don't know what a loaf of bread goes. My wife does all the shopping, so I haven't a clue. But I'm thinking to myself, can you just make bread at home? I mean, can you buy a mill and grind it down and get fresh bread and get the nutrients out of it? And I'm starting to think that's the way to go anymore. Why are we buying bread that they've absorbed all the nutrients out of it when they were processing the flour, and now what you're getting is just a white loaf of bread or whatever that just has no value?
I appreciate where you're coming from, John, but even that has become more challenging because the basic inputs like flour and yeast, they've jacked the prices up on basic things like that. Instead of buying, prepared rice dinners like Rice-A-Roni or, all the other ones out there, why don't you buy rice? Well, the price of rice soars up and down based on commodity prices and can become quite pricey just buying a bag of plain rice. All the inputs become something. So, I mean, at some point, we're all going to have victory gardens to survive.
A lot of people are going to that. In fact, a couple of years ago, I remember the not Department of Health, Department of Agriculture, whatever, wanted people to register their micro gardens. Like, wait a minute, hey, like I would do that, right?
No, these scumbags. I mean, look, I have a drone, and they regulate drones, and I wasn't happy about it because I'm a responsible drone user. I don't fly it over people's homes and backyards and watch people in their bikinis and look in their bathrooms or fly it over airfields or highways and things like that. Other people do. I don't. I'm an adult. I've got common sense, so I don't need to be regulated. But they decided to do it because it was getting out of control. This is like 10 years ago, 9 years ago. And I said, okay, fine. I'm not a fan. But the reason I went and registered my drone is because it was free. They said it wouldn't cost anything. It's free. Just register. We just need to know. So we know who's got the drones. You have to put a label on it and you have a registration number so that they can retrieve it and fine you if you misbehave. Okay, I can live with that. But then when it came time to renew, I had to pay. Screw you. I'm not paying you. This is just more money, just another way to fleece me out of my hard-earned income. You bastardi already take more than enough of my money in the form of wages. 48% of my income goes to pay taxes before I buy anything. I'm a pauper before I even buy anything. They already take almost half my income before I buy anything. And then I buy gasoline. I have the second highest gasoline tax in the country in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania or Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And they've got sales tax and you've got cell phone taxes and FCC taxes and telephone taxes and taxes on top of taxes. It's just ridiculous. I mean, and what do we get for this? Broken governance. We don't even have a government that's operating right now. And we get an idiot in Harrisburg who is a serial violator of the law. And he was the attorney general, not upholding the rule of law during the 2020 election, facilitating the criminal activity that took place in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the 2020 election. That's what we get for what we pay in taxes. It's insane. I mean, at some point, the colonists actually rebelled for far less than this. I mean, it was a 2% tax was put on tea, and they got bent out of shape.
Yeah.
Imagine what they do today if they saw what was going on.
Oh,
Lexington
they've
Concord would be a
already
joke.
marched, man. They'd be going. They
Yeah.
wasn't wasting time. But that's the difference between people today and people back then. Is people back then didn't waste any time. They had backbone and they had grit, and they knew the value of time. And sitting on your hindquarters not getting stuff done was not how they operated at all. They didn't have any problem putting a glove in somebody's face for an insult and demanding a duel. They were like, yeah, no, we're not playing games.
Well, check this.
FAFO meant something back then.
No, it did indeed. Well, check this out before we run out of time. A New Jersey man is arrested for camping in front of a cathedral ahead of the Supreme Court of the United States mass with hundreds of explosives.
Yeah.
New Jersey man is being slapped with a hate crime charge. A hate crime? How about it? Unlawful use of explosives following a shocking arrest in D.C. Authorities with the Metropolitan Police Department claim the man, identified as 41-year-old Louis D. Gary, not G-A-R-Y, but G-E-R-I, was reportedly camped out in a green tent in front of the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle in Washington, D.C. at 5 a.m. on Sunday. As police worked to secure the area for Red Mass, they requested the man move his tent, and the situation immediately went sideways. You might want to stay back and call the federales. He allegedly told an officer, "I have explosives," he said. When an officer with the department's bomb squad approached the suspect, he said, "Do you want me to throw one out? I'll test one out in the street. I have 100 plus of them. No one will get hurt," he continued. "There'll be a hole in the street. You'll just have to step back. I'll take out that tree." Good Lord. Several of your people are going to die from one of these, according to the affidavit. This guy had explosives. Upon searching the tent, police reportedly located a large cache of handmade destructive devices and some writings that allegedly revealed his significant animosity towards the Catholic Church, members of the Jewish faith, members of the Supreme Court, and ICE. 6 of the current Supreme Court justices are Catholic and 2 are Jewish. The court has a 63 conservative majority. The Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle is the mother church of the Catholic Archdiocese of Washington. And this guy hates Christians. He hates Catholics. He hates Jews. He hates ICE. Sounds to me like another unhinged leftist.
Sounds that way to me. I wonder if he's related to Antifa.
Well, he's related to stupidity, that's for sure. Maybe he married his first cousin. Or maybe his parents did. Maybe his parents married the first cousins.
Oh, geez.
Wait, we're coming full circle now, back to the issue in Tennessee.
Oh yeah, no, that's comedians, man. They hit pay dirt when they do that. Return back to the joke and have the reoccurring joke. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, marrying your cousin. I'm trying to think if any of my cousins are hot enough to even think about that. I got a lot of cousins. I should mention that. Oh my goodness, on both sides of the family, maternal and fraternal.
There's a lot to choose from out there in the world. I don't think I'd be concerning myself with it.
Whoa, look, it's Fast and Furious on the streets of Nashua, New Hampshire.
He was getting on it, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. was that The Rock? Anyway, yeah, so a lot of crazy stuff happened this week. Trump had the Canadian prime minister in town, and he was very cordial and congenial towards Mark Carney. But Carney goes back to Canada empty-handed. The tariffs remain in place. Canada's economy will continue to implode. Their unemployment now is exceeding 7%, and they're in a lot of trouble, particularly in the mining, the forestry, and the automotive industries. And you know what? The Canadians don't deserve it, but the Canadian government deserves it.
Yeah, you got that right. Canadians are good people.
Yeah,
I've never had any problems with Canadians. Always love my friends in Canada, and I feel for them because they've had poor governance. If we think we've had poor governance, they've had it worse.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, and it's just, going back to the truckers thing, we haven't really talked about it in a while, but you mentioned earlier. The thing about the truckers thing that really disturbed me is that when it was going down, I tried to reach out and offer advice to those folks, basically to tell them, listen, guys, don't block the roads. Drive into town, have a rotation cycle like the military does, red, green, yellow cycles, sleeping, preparing, and going. Have the trucks there 24 hours a day, but only a small portion of your force. And you have the right to drive through town. It wasn't blocked to those trucks, but you can't block traffic. And that's where they got in trouble, because they were impeding traffic. And then they used the full force of the state to go after them. But
are you talking about the U.S. People's Convoy or Canadian?
No, I'm talking the Canadian convoy in Ottawa.
Canadian.
When they got to Ottawa, they just parked the trucks on the street and caused chaos. They should have just drove around 24 hours a day around that central block and pissed off the authorities. That was legal. It's not an area that's restricted to weight, tonnage, or vehicles. They could drive there, but the problem is that they parked, and when they parked, that just set them up as targets for the government. It just wasn't very well thought out, in my view. And I said so as it unfolded at the time. This isn't Monday morning quarterbacking. I said so at the time that they should they should not do that. So anyway,
no, you're right. We strategized that same sort of idea in 2017. We had the Operation Black and Blue event in DC. And we were talking about future events because we parked on the streets there. We weren't impeding traffic, just parked in parking places.
Right, and at that time you were allowed to do that. But didn't they try to move to ban trucks from parking on the mall?
No, actually, they go there every year during October. They
so they didn't do it
this year, but they're permitted. They get permits to do it every year. But we just rolled in and did it. And but we were talking about future events and stuff where if we want to slow things down and grab attention. That's basically what you do these things for. You're not doing these things because you're trying to make a demand on government, right? Terrorists make demand. You're trying to get your grievances addressed and
right.
And we're running out of time here.
Yeah, we're almost at the top of the hour, so we'll see people next week. Why don't you take us out, John?
Actually, let's see.
Are we that close?
Just about. Yeah, we got about just a few minutes here. So yeah. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we're running to the top of the hour here. Well, we thank everybody for listening tonight. We hope you got something out of it. As always, catch us next week, same time, same place. We're just a little confused here because we don't have any outro music like we usually do. I'm not putting anything on anybody. Johnny always does a good job here and never fails, but I didn't communicate with him that we were going to be back in the studio this week. So we're just kind of playing around with time here. We got about 20 seconds left.
We're trying to count the clock down. Well, folks, next week we'll talk more about what's going on with the lockdown, no doubt. Trump also had a large number of his nominees approved by the Senate today. And maybe we'll discuss that next week if more of nominees come up, because a lot of people have yet to be confirmed by the Senate, but many were confirmed today. So there you go, folks. We'll see you next week right here on the Common Sense Conservatives on WSMN. For Todd, John, and myself, God bless and thank you. Have a good night.
WSMN 95.3 FM Nashua. Listen.